Welcome to the Chapter 3 Stigma podcast. This podcast was created to be there for any individual who feels that they are at a low point in life and are confused, seemingly alone, and helpless in their situation. I am a recovering alcoholic, and I felt this way too, until I sat across a table from another addict who shared his story and made me realize that I was not alone in my struggles. My life was saved by this realization, and I hope to help anyone struggling by sharing my story to show you that you are not alone and that life can contain unbelievable riches and meaning. Welcome. I am glad you are here. All right. Hey, folks. Welcome to another episode of the Chapter 3 Stigma podcast. This week, we're hitting a few milestones. And so I found myself again sitting on the couch with Alyssa, welcoming her back to the show to the episode to talk through just kind of where we are, and to also allow her to kind of take control of this episode and be the one to pose and ask the questions. So we are recording here today on Mother's Day 2025, and the first of the milestones I think worthy of discussion is that 2 years ago on Mother's Day was the morning that we made the decision that I would go into rehab. And so this day, this holiday in particular, I think will forever be impactful for us for that reason and that life-changing decision. And then just along with it, all the emotions that come with you being a mother to our two children. So beyond that, on Wednesday of this week, the 14th of May, it will be my official 2-year mark in recovery. So with that, Alyssa, welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome back. Welcome to our couch. By the way, you haven't really been in this space for a while.
I know, you've really spruced it up in
here.
As you were giving that intro, I was just thinking, does it just feel like it's been more than 2 years? Like, doesn't it seem like years ago versus just 2 years in terms of how long, or I guess I should say like that day, that decision day felt like it was longer ago than 2 years.
It feels like a different life, but I was actually talking to someone I work with, and because I'm taking the day off on Wednesday, and I'm just gonna kind of do my own thing, just sort of take the day, celebrate it. And so I mentioned it to someone that I worked with that knows about our journey, and they kind of made a comment that caught me off guard about, oh, wow, 2 years is such a long time. And from that standpoint, I don't know if it's because I'm surrounded by people that have significant time in recovery, away from alcohol, away from their drug of choice. But reflecting back, it's just a weird mix of time. Like, it feels like we've lived numerous lifetimes and experiences, yet at the same time 2 years really feels like nothing to me, in terms of my recovery and where my vision is set for that. So it's a
mix.
Right?
Right?
It's strange. I mean, and to think about it too, about how in the past, like, genuinely going 2 weeks was without drinking was a really difficult milestone for me, or achievement for me at that time.
Yeah.
So time's strange.
I'll just say, like, maybe the emotional turmoil that our world was in 2 years ago at this time feels like it was forever ago.
Yes.
Like, I feel like that, like you said, it's another lifetime. It's like a dream almost.
Yeah.
Not a good dream, but it was a dream of sorts. As compared to where we are now, because our day to day is just so different and stable. And I'm probably jumping ahead into the questions here that you
go right to
had planned out, but that's just what it feels like. So I had asked Kyle maybe like a month ago now if he would be interested in allowing me to kind of flip the script on him with a podcast episode and take the lead on the questions here, because when you do it yourself, I just feel like you have a certain agenda that maybe you're going towards in terms of like, or your plan for the conversation is just different. And so I thought, what, let me surprise Kyle with some of my own questions and take things from a different perspective here. And I actually had I thought about this more, I was going to ask other people if they had any questions for you that I could bring, but I guess we'll save that for another time. Maybe after listening to this episode, some of those things will come up and we'll go from there. But okay, so to start here, one of the questions, so last year I had the opportunity to attend Kyle's 1-year anniversary at his AA meeting where he received his 1-year chip. And that was really special to me because, it was 1 year and that was a huge milestone to hit at that time. And so, he gets a new chip. He had people that stood up and talked about him. He got to stand up and talk about how he had done it, how he had gotten to a whole year. And so, he will have that opportunity again here at the 2-year mark. And then is it 5 after that? Is that what
No,
it goes
to? Every year. Yeah. So the chip or milestone progression goes 24 hours. You can always take a 24-hour chip, no matter how much time in recovery you have. So you have 24 hours, you have 30, 60, 90 days, and then 6 months, and then 1 year, 18 months, 2 years, and then it's a yearly progression and celebration after that.
Okay. So now you're on to the yearly.
The annual.
Annual.
My chip is going to sit out on our dresser for a long time.
Yep. Yeah, we were in our counseling appointment earlier this week and we were talking about it and just said, "Oh, that chip's going to get a little bit dusty sitting out hopefully." Every day is, it's a day-to-day thing. It's 24 hours. So you're saying you could get a 24-hour chip if you're just like having a hard 24 hours and you've made it through that 24 hours, take a 24-hour chip.
Or if you feel like you're going through something and you just need the reminder, they will always pass out a 24-hour chip.
So that's without a relapse scenario.
Correct. Yeah.
Happening. Okay.
And I don't know if you've even paid attention, but the artwork for the podcast and even a lot of the Substack stuff is a 24-hour chip.
Yes.
So they have these stools in our AA room for like holding people's coffees and books and things like that. And in each stool they've stamped the 24-hour chip.
Which is what your picture is, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Exactly.
That's right. Oh,
exactly.
So cool. Okay, so all of that to say, my first question is, when they ask you on Wednesday, excuse me.
Yep.
When they ask you on Wednesday, how did you do it? What's your answer going to be?
When it comes down to it, it truly is about just shutting up and listening. That has been at the core one of the most profound lessons and manners in which I have been able to progress through everything we've gone to and find myself where I feel like I have landed in a space where I can focus on long-term recovery. I have scaled this out to all aspects of my life too, is like find the people that have done the thing that you are striving for and listen to them. And so when you do that in the rooms of AA, it is the 12 steps. It is not just reading it or saying them out loud. It is figuring out how to act on them and incorporate them into your life and do the action and activity that the step in particular is calling out. And so for me, that looked like, doing the work with my sponsor and making all of the amends and things like that the steps call for. But then when you get towards the tail end of the actual steps, 10, 11, 12, it is living in that constant daily practice of maintenance. And for me, that is, and one of the whole reasons I started the podcast was just to think through and talk about the 5 practices that I really have felt like saved my life. So
these are the pillars again that you
pillars.
practice?
I call them practices, but it's the movement, gratitude and awe, vision, community and spiritual connection, and just relentlessly pursuing all of those things every single day. And really the biggest change for me since entering into recovery is just the consistency and the focus on the singular day ahead.
Yeah, that's so cool. I'm going to throw in a ringer here. This isn't
Please.
One that we had discussed ahead of time, but do you feel like that's changed in the last 2 years? What that consistency looks like? How's it morphed from when you first left the doors of rehab?
Yeah, it's been growing my confidence in knowing that taking that mindset and doing those actions results in me being able to carry out and live the day without having to fear or go to alcohol. Fear the urge to go to alcohol or to go to alcohol. So it is by being consistent, it is getting those reps and being under a lot of duress and stress over the last 2 years and proving to myself, it's like I now know what it feels to go through a lot as just a human being, and to be able to lay my head down at night without having drank, without having felt the desire or the urge to drink. So, and I've talked about it before, like I left rehab with a lot of fear, and the fear was there because I didn't know how I would react, or if the things I planned on doing would sustain me through those like difficult times in life, because everything felt great leaving rehab. It was amazing to have almost 30 days of sobriety under my belt, but I just didn't know when it came to going back to the real world where alcohol was going to be available. And so obsessively focusing on those practices, listening, and just doing it day in and day out was just like the slow build of confidence until like really that cataclysmic moment for me where everything set in place. And when it came down to it, like when I saw and connected with God in a manner, in a way that completely transformed my life.
So what's been the most difficult parts of your journey in the last 2 years? Yeah,
and it's something I'm actively dealing with, or I would say like have just resolved, yet am still like sorting through things. It is letting things go. It is forgiving others. And really when it comes down to it, almost a new mindset or rule that I'm creating for myself is, if I feel like I am letting somebody off easy, if they hurt me or did something that was detrimental to me, if I feel like I'm letting them off easy, I'm probably making the right decision, because that means I have forgiven them and am able to just kind of let anything that will happen, just give it back to God. Try not to overly control the situation and just move forward. A huge part of recovery is addressing and dealing with your resentments. And though the first time going through the steps, I cleared the resentments that I've held on to and built over many, many years, they still get built in my head, in my everyday life. It's like I did the 4th and 5th step, whatever, back in say like July of 23, but it's like from that point to today, I've had experiences in life where resentment building happens, and truly letting go, forgiving, and moving forward has without a doubt been the hardest thing for me to put into practice.
So what's been easy?
Yeah, I actually had a hard time thinking about this one. I left it. I just jotted notes for myself to trigger some memories, and I left this one blank for a while. But then, like, truly the easy part is the ability to be present and just enjoy life and just realize how lucky I am and we are. Like, there are just times where, especially with a 3.5-year-old at home right now, his like shrieking giggles, the sparkle that is in his eye when we're doing something as a family or playing together, or just moments ago when I tucked him down to go to bed and I came downstairs and told you, it's just like, I just love, he had this broad, joyous smile on his face as he like pulled his covers around him. And it's just like, oh man, I know that feeling when you're just like so excited and ready to go to sleep.
Like you every night.
Like me every night, yeah. But it's the easy thing is just like being so present for that, because I knew I was missing it when I was going to alcohol and when I was really battling it, and I desperately wanted it, and to actually have it now is just like, it's this incredible experience where I get to just like bathe in it, and I really try to hold on to those moments and cherish them as much as I can as they're happening.
Yeah. Well, I cherish them too because I get to witness it in the background as well. You know, like sometimes I'll be inside working on dishes or something. Let's say I'm just like, I don't know, having a moment for myself, and I'll hear you and Grant like playing out in the backyard, and it's like, oh, this is amazing. This is something that wasn't a part of our future 2 years ago.
Right.
And so that's been amazing to experience. Let me think here. So I feel like too, you've turned off the numbness that you were experiencing before. Yeah. And that's been a huge change that I see through all this, is that like you were just disengaged in so many ways. And so I love hearing that that's the easy part for you. I feel like one of the things that we have, let's take this to alcohol directly. Okay. So how do you feel about like being around alcohol at this point? Because you've had experiences like you stayed at an Airbnb one night where you opened the refrigerator and there was just like cans of booze in the fridge.
Yeah. And that was before my 6 month.
Yeah.
Even.
Yep.
And I was alone.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you know, like those are those moments where that could have been really hard. So what was like something like that for you? Or, you know, going out to a restaurant where there's more of like a bar vibe to it, or, you know, like some of the, let's take it to those points too here. Yeah. What's easy, what's hard?
So it's been really, well, I'm going to rewind all the way back. When I left rehab, you and I, as a part of of my discharge plan, I think we had agreed to 120 days where there would be just a hard set rule: no alcohol in our house. You and I were not, if we were invited out, we were not going to go to a brewery, to somewhere that was specifically like serving alcohol. And so we set up these really rigid and hard boundaries. And then even with the grocery store, we were doing online orders and pickup orders so that you could just do the drive up and go. You didn't have to meander through the grocery store and worry about stumbling upon the alcohol section or having one at the end cap and all of a sudden be hit with like sideswipe with an urge and just like, oh, I could grab this and go and drink. And though that was healthy, I'm glad we did that. I can honestly say, and I'm the only one who can know if this is true or not, so I recognize that, but I can honestly say from the time I went into rehab until sitting here now, I have not had an actual urge or desire to drink. I'm kind of, I do feel like I'm lucky a little bit in that I actually didn't enjoy alcoholic drinks. I truly didn't enjoy beers. I think you could probably say there were a few wines that I enjoyed, but when it came down to it, I was chasing the alcohol and the effects that it had, primarily for the numbing purpose and just kind of making things disappear. So I haven't been in a situation, I know a lot of people who have good recovery where they say, oh, when I was at the baseball game or something and the sun was just shining and it was a beautiful afternoon, I just felt this craving for one. And so it's like, the awesome thing is there's a ton of NA beers and drinks out there right now. I haven't even had any desire for that. We go out to dinner. I honestly think I've had 2 mocktails in.
Yeah, it's a very small number. Like, I have no idea.
I just genuinely, that mixture, that concoction of flavors, I don't like. I was chasing the alcohol and the effects. And so once that got cleared through my system, it became actually quite easy for me not to feel these urges or desires. And so we set up those rigid boundaries, but then slowly, again, back to the consistency and just gaining confidence in yourself, I realized like I could be around it. You know, I had a server who put a beer in front of me at a work dinner because there were so many people at the table, and it's like, man, the smell, that like sweet smell of a draft beer like hit my nose, and it was like, oh dang, like I haven't smelled that in a while. And it was just, you know, I told them, I'm like, whoop, that one's not for me. Didn't order that. And, you know, they grabbed it, took it away. And so there's those opportunities to just like slowly expose yourself to situations where, you know, you're out with coworkers for a dinner and other people are getting drinks. And the good thing about being open and honest about my recovery journey is whether at a work event or whether with friends, I always had people that knew what we had been through, where I was, and they checked in on me and they asked if things were okay. And so that's why I have continued to be so open about it, is there's a little bit of accountability to it, but it also, you are just building out the army of support that you have on your side. So from that standpoint, it's like, we were never out with a group of friends where I felt any sort of pressure. The other thing is like, I don't like drunken debauchery anymore. So if we were in a situation with friends and things were getting out of hand, you and I think it would be a look, and it's like, all right, we're tired, we're going home. Like that life, that portion of my identity, I had to kill actually destroy that part of my identity, that part of my vision for control in life. I just had to eradicate. And once I did that eradication, it has largely been a non-issue being around alcohol. And now I'm finding myself at a point where there's a good portion of the AA book about serving others. Basically the 12th step, like how do you give back? How do you maintain your recovery and also allow others to enter into recovery, create the space and environment for others to enter into recovery? And a big part of that is you have to be capable and able of being in those places where alcohol is being served, because that's where the people that need you the most are going to be.
That's a really good point. I hadn't even considered something like that.
But... And so now, and that's the part of like, you know, when does short-term recovery become long-term recovery? It's like, well, you know, it's a grayscale, but that is one of the components that I think really indicates you flip over to long-term. I do almost feel compelled and a little sense of comfort to be in those type of situations, so that if it would come up that like I don't drink, or someone offers it to me and I decline it and it opens up a conversation, that's what I want to be there for.
Well, and you have been in those situations.
Exactly.
It's been very, very rare,
yes.
But there have been occasional situations where somebody doesn't know your story at all. And, you know, like it's a mild acquaintance, let's say, or whatever, someone we've been around, but not in a drinking setting. And they offer you something and you are very easy about just brushing it off as no, or no, thank you, or whatever. And not like, you know, diving into a big story about it too. And then, you know, later we've actually had it come up where like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. We would have never offered that had we known. And I mean, I think it's just amazing that you're able to just, have it be so normalized at this point. And I think a lot of people respect your decisions that you've been making, and especially for the people that were part of our community or our friend group prior to and have experienced what it was like to see you struggling, or to see you, even just like having a good time, like drinking with everyone else. Like that was, a part of our life at one point. We were definitely a part of that scene in college. And so I don't know. I think it's been really amazing that you've been able to change like this. And I think one part of it for you too is that you're kind of an extreme personality in some ways. Like if we buy a pint of ice cream, we eat the entire pint and I say we, but it's, Kyle gets his own pint of ice cream. Yep. So, and like I guess that's kind of a funny example, since you did that like sugar podcast with the guy.
I cut back after that.
You cut back quite a bit.
Yeah.
But there's still the occasional pint of ice cream that finds its way into our house.
So where I cut back is where I recognize that I was allowing emotions to lead to that. I'm very deliberate now when I celebrate with ice cream.
Yes.
Okay. And I think.
Well, and it doesn't have to be a celebration necessarily.
Right. Yeah. Right. But it usually is. I'm trying to limit how much I let the unthinking, like emotional drives carry my actions forward.
Yep. Yeah. So I think that like in some ways it's helped that you've had a bit of an extreme personality where like as soon as you entered the doors of rehab, it was like my goal is to never relapse. And because of how much of a stronghold you can put on some things, I think that you've been able to take these last 2 years as they've been because you have that strong stance, and it's very well planted in you.
And can I just say one other thing about like the time around alcohol? And you and I talk about this a lot. The most that I think about alcohol in terms of my day-to-day is recognizing moments in time when I would have drank. Work trips.
Yes.
There have been a few times where you are gone, and I kind of like have limited responsibility. And I mean, taking a random Wednesday off of work, we're going to send Grant to daycare. You are going to go to work. I have nothing in front of me that day. I would guarantee you would have drank. I would have been planning that for a week, 2 weeks ahead of time. I would have known it in my head that I was going to drink that day. Now I recognize those moments, and then it's just this reflection of genuine gratitude, being like, thank God I'm not, and that it's not even part of the decisioning process anymore.
Well, and I think the surprise situations were always difficult for you too.
Yes.
So like a couple weeks ago we had, that was last week. We got a call from daycare saying, hey, Grant's got a fever. He needs to come home to like now. And so suddenly your responsibilities totally shift. And I can for certain say that there was at least one time when you were still battling that you picked Grant up from daycare and either you had alcohol in your vehicle already to go home and drink it, or you guys stopped at the grocery store on the way home and you bought. And, it was that change in your schedule that led to that. And I know there's been many instances, or there were many instances of that during the 12 years you were struggling.
That was towards the end, especially as Grant was growing and becoming more mobile and requiring more of my time and effort. That was my biggest fear, and something that I absolutely dreaded was that I would be needed by my family and I couldn't show up.
Yeah. So I'm going to go back to the questions here because I think it kind of segues into the next question, which was what has surprised you about the last 2 years?
Just time in recovery.
And time in recovery.
I mean, I'm going to put aside the amount of difficulties that I'm that we are capable of navigating through, again, without feeling the need or the urge at all to go to alcohol, because that alone is a miracle. But I want to talk about something that has been a little harder to dig down, to understand and identify. But honestly, I think the vast majority, if not all, of addicts, alcoholics deal with this. I was genuinely fearful of my potential. I drank in many instances to cut myself down and to make myself less capable and less dependable, because I was afraid of basically who I could be. And it was almost like I didn't know if I could do what was required of me if I continued to show up and perform and to kind of like start advancing towards my full potential. And so I would drink to undercut that as much as possible. I would miss deliverables on projects. I would bail on friends and plans that we had, and I would just use it to undermine and undercut me, so that in a really messed up way, people wouldn't, if people were faced with almost like a very difficult situation, I was fearful of if they would call on me. And it is just incredible to look back and realize how much self-sabotage was involved.
Yeah, we were reading an article earlier this week about mothers, and there was a small topic within it about alcoholism, and the statement of, like, not being all that special came up.
Yes.
And I think that that's one thing, and it goes back to just the selfishness of the disease of alcoholism, is that you think of yourself as being, somewhat unique,
Yep.
one in a million,
Yep.
You're the only one going through this process. And as you've said, and I think it's in your intro for the podcast, even, it's just like, you aren't that special. There's so many people that are struggling with this. Right. And, so like that self-sabotage is so unnecessary. Right. And you do have a ton of potential, and, it's amazing. I would say that is surprising. And what about the time component? That's one that always comes up too.
Well, and that plays into the potential too, because it's like we have all this, and we've grouped these together. It's not only time, it's energy, and specifically it's creative energy. Mm-hmm. And I've been able to really start segmenting my life and my pursuit out into creative pursuits and pursuits of consumption. And I never was able to see that before, in a large part because I never had the energy or belief in myself to pursue some of the creative components. And like the podcast here is an example of that. Mm-hmm. And just being fearful of putting this out there and again, pursuing something that I think would be meaningful. And just now having the time and energy, like, there's no days wasted anymore. And we wasted mm-hmm. days, weeks, and months. Mm-hmm. I wasted days, weeks, and months mm-hmm. in the past.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I was a part of that too. So we were, mm-hmm. It affected more than just you and I, of course.
And then one other thing I want to say on the surprise is how empowering being honest is mm-hmm. in your life. There has been nothing that has generated more power, more army of people on my side, on our side, than pursuing the truth and being genuine about what I was thinking, what I was feeling, what we were going through. And it does speak to that, like, you're not special sort of thing, mm-hmm. because what I have found, and sort of the mindset that I have taken, is be willing to go first. And mm-hmm. what I've discovered is by being willing to go first, talking about something that, say, might make me nervous or that I'm fearful of, or struggles that I've had in the past, gives other people that I'm engaging with the opportunity to open up themselves and to be honest and truthful. And I think the more you spread that pursuit of like the highest truth and just trying to be as humble and honest with yourselves as you can, like the better everyone's going to be. Like I've seen improvements in work, our personal life, and in friendships because of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So then before you entered into recovery, did you ever imagine that your life would be what it is now?
No, not even close. Like and I'm just going to roll right into your next question. I genuinely couldn't picture my life past 35. And it's funny to be 35 right now, but I had no concept of beyond that age for whatever reason. And I held that in my mind, really, I would say since my late 20s. Just for whatever reason, there seemed like a ceiling there in my head where it's just like, I couldn't picture it. And so it's what we're doing day to day. I think that's one of the reasons that it does genuinely feel like a gift. I don't know if you flip through at all any of my morning journals that I do, but I actually don't do a lot of like free thought writing anymore. Like when I was in rehab, I had so much built up upstream of like this emotional dam that I had put up that I would free write like pages and pages in my journal. And these days, my journaling exercise looks way different. And when I come and I basically chart out like, what would a great day look like? And then I get to this free form writing. And basically every single day, unless I have thoughts in my mind about something I want to do or keep track of, I'm writing really a single sentence. Let's do this, another gift. And that has really felt like what life has become.
Yeah.
In recovery and looking at
good
coming
mantra.
up on 35. Yeah.
Yeah. So well, you are 35. You're 35 and a half at this
I'm sorry.
point.
I mean, I'm coming up on 36. Yeah. The beyond of 35
beyond 35
that I could never envision.
So prior to recovery, you felt like 35 was the end at max. During recovery, what did you feel like your life was going to be, and is it any different than what the reality is?
I mean,
I'm sorry, during rehab.
During rehab. Okay. Yeah, one of the things that like really helped me reset my vision, I would say, and I recorded a podcast episode about it in particular, was the obituary exercise. Mm-hmm. That for me showed me what I wanted. Now, it's funny because like in my obituary, I do talk about basically dying of natural causes at an old age. And we hadn't gone through everything that we went through with Lucy at that point. And I'm saying all this to say, like, you and I have talked about this. There's an unexpected component of having lost a child, but having faith in the next step and a belief in the next step, where there is an odd comfort to the idea of death. Mm-hmm. We talk about feeling Lucy's presence all the time. And so there's been a loss of fear when it comes to like, well, what if I don't achieve that grand vision of dying surrounded by kids and grandkids? But it's become a lot more about what I want to create around me than who I really want to become. Like my vision for life before I could picture it beyond 35 was like an image of me, of us in a home in the mountains with alcohol in my hands, like showcasing this control. Mm-hmm. And I don't have that like visual,
like physical.
Yeah, there's
vision
nothing
of it.
There's things, there is potential that I want to pursue. Mm-hmm. And it all comes back to me to that, like, you have your physical, emotional, spiritual components to life, and I want to pursue being better. And there's never perfection across any three of those. And, incorporating that into not only my life, but the life of those closest to me. I kind of went off the rails there. Did that?
So you're saying you more so hope to create a legacy that is based around like how you've made people feel more so, and just like the way that they view an opinion of your life versus, he was a person who ended up with a house in the mountains and he lived this great life where he was doing X, Y, and Z.
Right.
In terms of like achievement.
Yeah. It's not
tangible
This
things.
is going to be super tacky, but it's not that moment that I'm picturing. It's the build up to it. It's all the pursuit and the work that goes into it, and all of the opportunities that I have and that we have to impact others along the way and along that journey.
So you kind of answered this question, but I'll pose it here as well. So how do you feel about what your reality is versus what you imagined it to be, either
like
prior
even sitting
to
in rehab?
Yeah, or sitting in rehab.
Yeah. Yeah, and in the intake room in rehab, as funny as it sounds, like I thought my life was over. Like I didn't, not in the sense of a death, but it kind of was a death because it was a death of that vision. And I realized that I had to totally start anew, but it didn't feel like a refreshing opportunity. Yeah. It truly felt like the end. And so really what it's become and what I feel day to day is just like the most intense amount of gratitude, like to the point sometimes of being emotionally overwhelming, where I will actually pause and stop and like I've broken down in the past over it. And we've talked about that, but one of the things I remember, I think I was in high school when this person or when this thing happened, but I have this like visual that kind of explains it. There was a really great college running back for Georgia. His name was like Noshawn Marino, and he got drafted. I can't even remember what NFL team, but it was like, I mean, he was a big deal, and he came into the league, and it was one of his first game, if not first professional game, and they had the camera on him. And this is just like a big, bulky, athletic guy, and he has the biggest tears running down his face as he is listening to the national anthem play. And they talked to it, and he just like he looked so stoic while it was happening. And they talked to him after the game, and he said, "I was filled with so much gratitude that my emotions just poured out of me." And I remember being like, how can that ever happen? That happens like not on the daily or the weekly, but
more frequently than
much
you
more
expected.
Frequently, where I will be so grateful, so in awe, and just like genuinely feel like I'm living a life that I would not trade with anyone right now. Like I love our life so much. I don't desire anyone else's. Like I have pursuits, I have progress that I want to make as an individual with us as a couple, but I don't want to pursue it as anyone else. Like I want to be right where we're at and striving for the things that are ahead of us. Yeah,
that's amazing. I mean, I love hearing that as your spouse. Yeah. So thank you for sharing that. So you've done how many podcast episodes
This
now?
is 65.
65.
It was only supposed to be 3 to 5 to start out.
Oh, right. Yeah. That's right. So you've done almost 65 podcasts, and I'm curious if there's anything that you haven't shared about your journey through recovery, or in recovery, that you would be interested in sharing.
Yeah, I think I really try to be honest, but I think this is an opportunity to just like overly stress how I still deal with very much battling resentment building, with anger, with flashes of rage. When they happen, I really try to talk. I try to avoid letting that life build up to those moments. Like you and I have a lot more conversations that are like pressure releases opportunities for me, and so we don't get built up to that. But I can still go off, and it's when those resentments are sitting around for too long, not being genuinely addressed. And I really do feel like in the last 2 weeks I've had a breakthrough with this realization I had about, the act of forgiveness versus allowing yourself to trust someone again. Like I was coupling those things together. And so not being willing to trust someone, I was also not forgiving them. And by not forgiving them, I was building a resentment up, and like all of that would come flashing out in like a lot of anger, different anger than before. 'Cause like I wasn't necessarily taking it out on myself as much as I had, but like, I mean, that still happens. And then we talk about it. And I'm definitely not perfect. I have a better ability of not just hiding from what's actually bothering me.
Well, in the past, if you would try to hide, it would be that you would just drink, and then you would numb it,
shut the conversation down.
Yeah. Or you would be detoxing and trying to have a conversation at that point as well, in which case you weren't emotionally available at those moments either. So you don't have that option when you're in recovery.
Exactly.
So.
No, and then the other things, again, I've been really as open and honest in doing this work as I can. This podcast, the Substack, is very selfishly motivated. Like this is my 12th step in a big way. I actually have kind of been thinking about the end of the road for this, or just like putting a cap on this piece of work, because I do want to make it available for someone that is in that state of desperation. And my fear is, like we said, 65 episodes, and most of them are short, but man, you start tacking on more and more episodes. How does a person know where to start?
Right.
Does it become too intimidating to get into this? I really want this to be a way for people to enter into recovery in ideally a manner that's less disruptive to their life than going to rehab. Although that's the right choice for a lot of people. And then the final thing is, like, I do still have fear. My greatest fear right now, and relatively speaking, it's very small, but complacency is my biggest fear. And it's one of the reasons I continue to go back to AA, is you hear the stories of the people who had 23 years of recovery, 23 years of sobriety, and let it all go. They stepped away from their actions that kept them in recovery. They built resentments. They went back to their drug of choice. And in some instances, you hear about people that lose a whole month to 2 months of their lives. They just disappear after 23 years in recovery. And those stories, that reality, fighting back against complacency, or I should say I fight back against complacency because I still have a fear of it.
I think that's a healthy fear to have.
Right.
And I mean, if I'm being honest, I probably have the same fear for you as well.
Right.
And so
and that's why you check.
Hearing that.
Yeah. I think you do a good job of checking in. When it's been a while since I've been to AA, or just like, hey, what have you been doing for recovery?
I try to challenge you a little bit in terms of, maintaining the steps that you're wanting to take. And sometimes that question is, well, I thought you were going to AA this morning. Why didn't you go?
Yeah.
And we just talk it through, and that's important, that piece of communication. So then our counselor had asked us this week, about giving back to the recovery community. And you've kind of touched on this already, but can you explain the ways in which you feel like you're giving back right now, or any ways that you feel like you want to or feel called to give back in the future here?
Yeah,
what your plans are, especially if you decide to step away from this body of work?
Right. I think the biggest thing for me and the most meaning is found in the one-on-one conversations and engagements that this, what?
You almost said conversation.
No, I didn't. I did not.
Well, that's what I heard.
It was gonna
which
be
is a really funny way of saying conversation. It's not just
they are shitty conversations sometimes.
Yes, they can be.
This was going really well. Now I have to mark this as expletive. But no, those one-on-one engagements and conversations and getting to see your effort and energy go back into someone else and getting to watch the most powerful thing about watching someone enter into recovery is the light that comes back into their eyes. Mm-hmm. And it comes back in those early days. Mm-hmm. And then to see that progress. Anyway, that's the motivation in a big way, right? Like that's your trophy for all of this. But so I think like in part it's exploring, that actual one-on-one sponsorship. I think I've mentioned this on the podcast, but I am in the process of writing a book of everything that we went through, the 12 years of alcoholism, coming into recovery, the challenge in taking on Lucy's life and the aftermath, just recognizing that if not all of the story, definitely bits and pieces of the story have empowered other people, and wanting to figure out a way, not even to scale that, but just to make that available. Because my motivation, we've talked about this quite a bit. My motivation for writing everything out at this time is I want it available to Grant and to any other child that we might have in the future, to hand to them at some point when it feels like they're ready to just be honest with how difficult everything was and how much we worked and how much we loved and how important they were to the story and the recovery and just our lives. And I feel like if I kicked the can on doing something like that and just said, I'll start writing it out when Grant seems older and more ready, I would forget some of the hard parts, like really some of the difficult portions of the life that we went through when I was battling my addiction at its worst. Yeah,
it's really special that you are writing it down, and I mean, even if it's just for our family, I think it's a beautiful thing that you're doing for our children.
I talk about one thing in entering into recovery being like genuinely setting low expectations. Mm-hmm. All the work that I've put into writing this out. I mean, you've been graceful with allowing me to wake up early every day, and since August, and all of that effort, all of that energy is more than worth it if someday I am able to hand one single copy over to Grant. Mm-hmm. To me, that makes all of this worth it, and that's all I'm doing this for.
It's so special. Thank you. Do you feel like you still have progress to make? I feel like you kind of hit on this as well, but anything else you want to add in terms of your progress?
I think the only thing I'd add, so I'll hit on the things that are my focus right now, but then just more principally speaking, how I view each day to maintain the focus on progress, because this isn't even anything it's going to go back to my journaling exercise in the morning. But I don't think you're even aware of this structure that I've sort of brought in. But like very tactically in the moment, 2 years in recovery, what I'm focused on most is my emotional stability. And what I mean by that is, something happens in life and my default mode of thinking is to revert to these black and white, always, never, this is a good or bad situation. Mm-hmm. And then when those thought patterns hit, I let my emotions get carried away down those roads before and just getting better at recognizing, hey, that emotion is chasing this idea that this is a bad situation, or, that something is never going to come to be because of X, Y, and Z. I'm gaining more ability to recognize that, stop that emotional runaway, and sort of bring things back within the guardrails. So that just like emotional stability, and again, trying to I think having a 3-year-old is a good challenge for that, because we see it every single day when there's no filter to emotions, and when emotions, especially with a redheaded boy, get just projected physically. It's a good reminder for me, but I definitely want to be making progress on that. And then the concept of forgiveness and not letting situations build into resentments that take more work to untangle. Mm-hmm. And I think by building out my ability to truly forgive, turn the situation over to God, and understand when I do and do not have to extend trust, or what criteria need to be met where I can start extending trust again. I think that's going to be, I just really think I came upon something big for me in an area mm-hmm. that I felt like I knew that I needed to make some serious progression. So yeah, just like broadly speaking, figuring out forgiveness. But the manner in which, again, I sort of end my journaling, there's a prompt, and it's something about, in what manner or how are you going to improve today? And every single day I have 3 words that I write. It is pray, act, and reflect. And so I start my day praying basically to allow God to remove my selfish desires, remove my ego, and to allow me to serve him and his purpose for me as much as I possibly can. And I act, right? I really view my life through like kind of a forward-leaning action taking. Like I'm not on the defensive anymore. Mm-hmm. And so I'm acting. Even when we're sitting on the couch watching a Netflix show, at the end of the day, that is our time. That is, that is taking the action and bringing things back and bringing energy back into our relationship. And then at the end of the day, and speaking of progress, like this is something I'm trying to work on more and more, is the reflect portion. So mm-hmm. look back at your day. Where did you make mistakes? Do you need to apologize for anything that you did? Could you have acted better in one of the situations? Mm-hmm. How would you take it in the future? And just really try to close your day out, reflecting back on it. Shut your eyes, thinking about, the progression that you can make into mm-hmm. tomorrow. Mm-hmm. I have found myself, so closing out, there's not much structure. The reason I said that there's still progress to make on the reflection is I don't have a lot of structure outside of, I actually find myself talking to Lucy a lot when I go to bed. And that started from, the day after we lost her, and I've tried to just sort of incorporate that component of it into the reflection, because that's where I really feel connected to her, and just she's the one in a big way that I can just kind of talk to and express gratitude to for the day that we had.
I've always felt like Lucy was this old soul. When, even like the moment she was born, she was born critically ill, and she had been through a battle to even remain alive within my body. And so, the moment she was born, it was like, now her real battle begins, where she has to do this fight more so on her own. Like, we were there for her,
right,
and we supported her in every way that we could. But I kind of think of her as this old soul. So I don't know if when you talk to her, if it's the same way as it is for me, but I kind of talk to her like she's an adult. Like, she's
absolutely
lived like an entire lifetime,
yeah. Because
she did live her entire lifetime in those 8 days with her. And, she's omnipotent. She knows all, and she sees all that we do. And, so it's, how did we make you proud today?
Yes. And,
if not, help us.
Yeah.
Help us to improve. And I think I hope that you're doing this in ways where you're not cutting yourself down too much, too often, or anything like that. But, I think it's good that we close our day with Grant by singing Lucy's song and telling her that we love her and keeping her present in those ways. And I think she does the same with us as well. Yeah.
Yeah, no, to me, she feels like the ultimate guide in life. And I think just thank you for the questions. This is, like we talked about, there is no way to have predicted what the last 2 years would have entailed. I think what it's taught me is I don't want to waste a lot of time or energy thinking about what the next 2 days, 2 years, 2 decades could look like. I genuinely have found that, and it's just amazing to me how we've been able to incorporate that daily progression in our own lives as individuals and as a couple and as a family. So thank you for everything. Like I said, it's humbling to think back and realize that from my perspective, we went from a dead end, our life, there just be nothing in front of us. And then we've been able to build this out. So I love you. That's how we usually close these with you on. So just incredibly grateful for everything.
As am I. I'm looking forward to Wednesday, but we'll take it a day at a time till we get there. Right. Because it's Sunday.
It's 3 more days.
We got 3 more days.
One at a time. All right. Love you. Love you all. If you enjoyed this podcast, share it with others who might find it impactful. And give us a rating through your streaming platform of choice. Ratings and comments help spread the work to others who are desperately searching for a solution. This simple action could have profound impacts on the lives of others. My hope is that my story can help those who feel alone in their struggles with addiction or any other aspects of life. You can follow us on social media at Chapter 3 Stigma on Instagram and YouTube. If you want to reach out with a message through one of those channels, I will respond and let you know that you are not alone. All the best, you are loved, and know that this life is full of abundant joy and wonder and is worth every struggle and bit of suffering you must endure. Until next time.